I find it ironic as well, because when I was at school, I used to always get told off for daydreaming, and I'd be staring out the window and kind of making up stories in my head, and I'd always get told off for it. And it's ironic that now that's how I make my living. I kind of just write them down. So so I just feel very, very lucky.
Here she is, from her attic.
Hi, everyone.
It's Malorie Blackman, everyone. Come on, another round of applause.
Hi, lovely to be there.
It's so nice to have you here, honestly. It's so nice to see faces. It's so nice to know that people are watching at home and that we've somehow managed to put this together into a new world. I keep calling the fact that we're re-emerging from a crazy 18 months as a kind of hopeful, perhaps braver, newer world where we can experiment with multimedia, and you're in your attic.
I am, yes. So, excuse the mess, but there you go.
Is this where the magic happens, Malorie? Is this where you write?
It is, yes. It's on my Apple Mac, and kind of like surrounded by books behind me, and in one of the alcoves of the books, there's a skeleton called Sarah wearing a Panama hat, so she keeps me company. So, yes, this is where I work.
Amazing. It's nice to have that insight. It really is. So I really want this to be a celebration of your legacy, because this is the Edinburgh International Book Festival. You've been here before, you've spoken about different books coming out, but let's be honest, you've done so much. You've been writing bestsellers for over 20 years, and when I was researching about you, that's when I started to get nervous, because I was like, okay, the breadth of work that has come out of your mind is quite incredible. So only you can really give us the CV. Tell me how many books you've published, how many things have gone to TV and film, etc. We are celebrating quite the legacy.
Okay. Well, I have been around for like 30 odd years. In fact, my first book came out on November the 2nd, 1990. So it's been a while. And I've had a few books on television like WYSIWYG and Pig Heart Boy, and most recently Noughts Crosses. And that's also been 2 theatre plays adapted by 2 different script writers. So I just feel I've been really, really lucky. And I've written, it's over 70 books, but to be honest, they're not all in print anymore, but that said, I think it's over 70, but I don't know the exact number. So
that's enough though, right? I'm sure there's many more, but it kind of proves why I was starting to get nervous. With that amount, in terms of over 30 years in different forms as well, from book to TV to play, at what point do you feel like, yeah, I've made it? What has been one of the achievements that in your heart you felt really like you'd accomplished something?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question, because I guess feeling like I've made it, I don't know what that means. I don't know if I've ever felt that. I just feel I kind of go from book to book, and I have to be very enthusiastic about the book to write it, because if it's a novel, it's going to be at least a year of my life now. They usually take me at least a year. But I think I just feel incredibly lucky, because I used to be a computer programmer and I had enough of that. And I kind of feel that, and I knew I wanted to be a writer, but it was kind of 2 years and 82 rejection letters later, and that was for 8 or 9 different books, when a publisher finally said yes. And I just feel I'm so lucky, because I wake up every morning and it's, I'm going to my job, which is, upstairs to my attic most of the time. But, there's so many people who are just working to make ends meet and pay those bills. And I actually have a job that I love. I have a career that I love for most of the time. Mm-hmm. So I just feel kind of really, really lucky that I get to do that. And I find it ironic as well, because when I was at school, I used to always get told off for daydreaming, and I'd be staring out the window and kind of making up stories in my head, and I'd always get told off for it. And it's ironic that now that's how I make my living. I kind of just write them down. So so I just feel very, very lucky.
You seem so exuberant when talking about a long period of being a writer. Whereas I sometimes find when I write and I work in different mediums that it can be quite lonely, and also sometimes, particularly when addressing certain subject matters, which I know that you address too and have done for a long, long, long time, quite painful. So how do you protect yourself and get on with the harder elements of being a writer who wants to talk about serious stuff?
God, you're full of good questions today, Gemma.
I'm trying.
I mean, God, it's tricky because yes, writing is a solitary profession most of the time. I'm up in my attic most of the time by myself writing. But so you have to love your own company. I think you have to really just enjoy being by yourself for a lot of the time. And when I was at school, I used to kind of, sometimes it was lovely being with friends, but sometimes I would disappear into the piano room and just kind of tinker away on the piano or whatever, or I'd go to the library and just sort myself away with a good book. So I've always kind of, I always felt like I was a bit of a misfit, and kind of felt like I was, I was quite a solitary child anyway. And so it kind of, I think writing in that sense kind of suited me. But also when it comes to writing painful things, yeah, I've done that. But I think actually the things I've taken a risk on and the things that have been incredibly painful to write have tended to be the things that people have responded to the most and have done the best for me, and kind of just have continued to sell over the years. But it's not that so much for me. It's about kind of just trying to be honest in what I write, in my writing, and truthful with it, even if it's painful. And sometimes it has been incredibly painful. But then I treat it kind of like my psychiatrist's couch. So it's my way of kind of dealing with issues. I think, as a child and a teen, especially as a teen, for me, reading was very much about trying to figure out who I was, what I wanted to be, and my place in the world. And I kind of feel that writing is still a part of that. It's still me trying to kind of get to grips with the world. And it's an ongoing process, and one of my sort of favorite sayings is every day's a school day, because I love learning stuff, and I like kind of people, I like being educated about stuff and learning about new things. And I think, and that's why every year I try and do a new course at the City Lit down in London, and just to kind of keep my brain active and fresh and learning things all the time, learning. So I think it is that ongoing process of just trying to be truthful in what I write, be honest with it. Even though it's fiction, I think people respond to it when they recognize, but it's relatable and believable, and you do that through bringing truth to the story, whatever story you're telling. It could be science fiction, fantasy, whatever, but I think as long as you bring that truth to it, then people will believe the truth within it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And as a literary great who does dance the dance in the sense of combining genres, so from social issue to science fiction, I love that it can be told through story. We can connect through the fiction element of it, but at the same time, it will connect to us in terms of the everyday, despite the setting that you may be creating being otherworldly. What made you decide to go down that route?
Well, I mean, for Noughts Crosses in particular, I just felt that I wanted to set it in an alternate Britain, but I wanted it to be a contemporary Britain. I wanted it to be very much of the here and now, so it would be recognisable in that sense, but an alternate Britain where I had crosses kind of as the majority, or definitely the ones with the power base in society. So it's interesting to me. I call it speculative fiction because and some people have described it, Noughts and Crosses in the series, as dystopian. But I find that fascinating because all I did is flip it. So are we therefore, if you are a black writer or black person or person of color or whatever, would you describe it as kind of that we are living in a dystopian society? Would white people say that we are living in a dystopian society? Yet all I did is flip it in my book, and then people describe it as dystopian. So I kind of think, well, that's interesting, because would you say then that the other way around is dystopian as well? So I don't call it dystopian, I call it speculative fiction. But I think the beauty of that is it allows you to go certain places and create your own world, literally, and set your own rules. But as I said, it's really important for me, at least, to make sure that the characters were absolutely grounded in a reality that was recognizable. Because then if it's recognizable, or if it's believable, then it will be relatable. And then people won't read it thinking, oh, I don't understand this, or, or this world is kind of just too much. I can't get to grips with it. It was very, very much for me had to be about, I flip it, but pay attention to the characters that I'm creating and their lives. And before I start writing, I always do my kind of mini biographies of all my major characters, so I really get to know them, and hopefully they become three-dimensional characters, not just to me writing it, but to people reading it as well. So I do spend a lot of work on kind of just my mini biographies and working out my characters, even within the most strange settings, or kind of flip settings. So I must admit, I do love sci-fi. And but to make sci-fi work, I feel you have to really latch on to people and their concerns and their objectives and what motivates them, and all the obstacles that are getting in their way. You have to be understandable and believable and so on. So if anything, I feel I pay more attention. I mean, I do pay a lot of attention in all my books, but I pay even more attention when it's speculative fiction or sci-fi.
Speculative fiction. That's a really great way of summing it up, because I was finding some of the responses didn't seem to fit in how I wanted to talk about it. How long ago did you write Noughts and Crosses, just for context?
20 years ago.
Wow.
The 20-year anniversary.
20-year anniversary of Noughts and Crosses.
It's been a big, big chunk of my life.
Yes. And I read that you found it, as you were sort of mentioning earlier, challenging, painful, but also cathartic. Does it still act as a vehicle of catharsis for you in the modern world, or is it related to how you once felt?
I think it's a bit of both. I think, certainly in the first book, when people used to say to me, are you in any of your books? And I'd always say kind of, hell no way am I going to write about myself. But of all the characters that I've created in all my books, Callum's personality in Noughts and Crosses is probably closest to my own. And also some of the things he goes through in that book are absolutely true, and I'll quote it verbatim. Things like when the first time I traveled first class on a train and the ticket inspector accused me of stealing the ticket, or the conversation I had with my history teacher where I said, how come you don't talk about black scientists and achievers and inventors? And she looked me in the eye and she said, because there aren't any, Laurie. And I just thought, well, I'm sure there must be, but we'd never been taught about any. So I couldn't come back to it. And it was only in my 20s that I actually learned about all the many, many black pioneers and achievers and so forth. And so those bits in Noughts and Crosses are based on those conversations that I had. And, so a lot of the stuff that Callum goes through, especially at school, and his thoughts on things and so forth, were my own as a teen. And so that did make it very, very painful to write. And I remember at the end of the book, at the end of Noughts and Crosses, I was writing it, and it got to me so much that I was actually in tears. I mean, it's so embarrassing saying that now, because I feel like a numpty, but I was actually in tears when I was kind of like writing it. And then and for a brief nanosecond, I thought, oh, should I change the ending? And I thought, no, you can't. You've got to be honest about this, and this is the honest ending. Don't you dare censor yourself. And so I carried on, and it has the ending it does have. And again, I suppose in Endgame, I felt the same thing where You know, it's like there's a part in Knife Edge, for example, where Jude is beating up this woman he's met called Cara that he's beginning to be really attracted to. So his way of denying his feelings is to beat her up. And I remember writing that, and a chill went down my spine. And again, I thought, oh my God, should I pull back from this? And I thought, no, don't you dare. If you're feeling it when you write it, then hopefully people will feel it when they read it. And again in Endgame, I was writing that, and I knew it was going to be the last book in the Noughts and Crosses series. It's the last one I'm ever going to write, the final book of that series. And so it was kind of strange because it was kind of trying to reflect the here and now, and there are kind of newspaper articles scattered throughout the story, trying to reflect that, you know, contemporary concerns on what's going on in the here and now, but also they had to fit in within the context of the story. And there was a bit towards the end where it was kind of, oh gosh, you know, this really is the last one. And so that was really strange as well. But it is that thing of not shying away from the difficult, and not shying away from the painful, and not shying away from, you know, your own feelings as a writer coming into it. Even because sometimes it is a bit kind of, gosh, am I showing too much of myself through these characters or whatever? But I think sometimes you just have to go with it and embrace that, you know. But sorry, go ahead.
No, this is so interesting, and I also think is a moment to big up your imagination too. You know, not only is there an obvious emotional intelligence there where you're thinking up these things for the characters, but a fantastic fiction writer is somebody that can also use the fiction element and imagine things and create lives within something that's way beyond your own life, if that makes sense. And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, but you know, I just think imagination is a muscle. It's like a muscle, and the more you use it, the stronger it gets. And so it is about lots of reading. I mean, the first thing I say when people say to me, I want to be a writer, can you give me some advice? Is read. You can't write. I really believe you cannot write if you don't read. And it's about just feeding your imagination. Just go and read lots of different books by lots of different authors in lots of different genres. Get out there and talk to people. Get out there and just see what's going on in the world. Listen to the news if you can bear it, because I mean, a lot of the time it's so depressing. But it's kind of just know what's going on in the world. Talk to people. Read things. It's about just making yourself maybe a repository for all kinds of things that are going on, because then it all feeds your writing. And I've always done that, and I you know, it's one of these things where this is another bonus as a writer, because I've always been so nosy, so incredibly nosy. But you know what? As a writer, you can call it research. And so, you know, so if you are having a kind of conversation, you know, another table or kind of on the train or a bus behind me, I'm going to have a listen. But it's research. So it's
has that ever come back on you, though? Has anyone that you know ever said, "Excuse me, I didn't expect that to make the pages"?
Well, no, because I would never do it verbatim. I would always change it enough so that they couldn't do that. But there have been times where I've just had to catch myself, and you know, like one time, I remember I was walking up to a City Lit course, in fact, and there was a man and woman walking towards me, and he was walking in the middle of the pavement, and she was walking in the gutter, not actually even on the pavement, walking in the gutter, and she was crying her eyes out. And he wouldn't look at her. This man wasn't looking at her. She was talking to him very, very quietly, facing him, and just tears they were just bouncing off her jacket as she spoke to him. And I remember kind of, you know, the two of them walking towards me, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what's going on here then? And I must admit, when I walked past them, I did stop and turn around and then start to follow them. And then I thought, oh God, Malorie, get a life. And so, but I was just thinking, God, well, first of all, it was kind of, is she all right? But then, oh my God, what's going on? But then I thought, no, you know, just carry on, because it's just a conversation going on. So I carried on walking. But it is that thing of just being curious. I think the major thing about being a writer is to be curious. and to feed your imagination wherever you can, and don't be afraid of using your imagination when you write. And and sometimes I write really out there stuff, and sometimes I write stuff that's absolutely rooted in the here and now and the contemporary and contemporary concerns. But the beauty of being an author is you can do both. And or certainly from my own point of view, I'm very lucky in that I kind of write where the mood takes me and where my enthusiasm and my interests take me.
I read you talk very viscerally about how you never saw yourself or your life reflected in the books that you were reading. So you mentioned that you were always a bookworm, you were always into books, but it took until you were in your 20s to read a book with a black protagonist.
Well, to read a novel, because when I was doing my A-levels, one of the set texts we did was Othello, by Shakespeare's Othello. So that was the first time I encountered a black character in literature.
Yeah.
But the first novel was when I was in my early 20s, and The Color Purple by Alice Walker. And then I went through every Toni Morrison book I could find, Bucci Machita, Alice Walker. Who else did I read? I mean, I just devoured everybody, all because there was a black bookshop in Islington. So after paying my mortgage and paying for food and the bills, all my money went on books from the black bookshop. And that's how I kind of educated myself as to kind of black pioneers and inventors and achievers and so forth, but also educated myself in terms of fiction and a lot, but I'd say 99% of the fiction I read was from African American. No, take that back. Maybe 95% was African American. Some was African, some was Caribbean, but the lowest percentage was kind of Black British, because there were so few books written at that time, when I was kind of in my 20s, written by Black British authors or authors based in Britain. So I remember it was kind of one of the first books for children I read was James Berry's The Thief in the Village and Other Stories, which was a brilliant, brilliant book. And then I read John Agard's poetry, Grace Nichols' poetry, Benjamin Zephaniah's poetry. But fiction books, fiction novels, they were like few and far between. Oh my God. And so, I just thought, this is ridiculous. This is the situation when I was a kid, and has nothing really changed. And I am one of these people, when something's annoying me or something, I have a bit of a whinge, but then I like to do something about it. So I thought, well, okay, let me see if I can do something about this. And I've always written stories and poems for my own amusement. From the time I was like 7 or 8, I was doing that. And so I kind of thought, well, okay, let me see if I can kind of just write and actually try and get published. And I had no clue how to go about it. So it was all a really, really steep learning curve. But it was one of those things, once I made up my mind that I wanted to write, I wasn't going to let anything stop me. And in fact, when I was getting all those rejection letters, I must admit, I'm not going to lie, around about my 60th rejection letter,
wow,
I came about that close to giving up. Because I thought, if all these publishers and editors are saying no, should I listen? And then I made a deal with myself. I'd wait till I got to my 1,000th rejection letter, and then I have a sit down and a serious think about whether or not it was ever going to happen. But I got to 82, so that's,
and
right.
You are going to be reaching published books over 82 anyway. Do you know what I mean? You've done 70 already, so I think a round of applause for that. Stuff the rejection letters.
I would say to any writer, do not give up. If you want to be a writer, and you're burning to do it, if it's something that not just you want to do, but you need to do, whatever your background, don't give up. Go for it. Put the work in. Learn about about the world that you want to be a part of. And do your homework, and then if you can, just try and get on some writing courses if you have no clue, because that's what helped me. I went to a number of courses at the City Lit, kind of, I did a writing for women workshop, writing for women. I did a sci-fi writing course. I did a playwriting course. I did a and then I did a writing for children introduction course, and then I did the workshop for about 5 years, and that was brilliant. And that was how I kind of found what I wanted to write. I knew I wanted to be an author. I wasn't quite sure what kind of books I wanted to write. So then that's when I thought, okay, when I joined the Writing for Children workshop, that's when I thought, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to write for children.
There's a patience to be noted to that. The patience in learning, exploring, the patience in even the idea that you could be rejected so many times, but knowing like what your sort of purpose and aim is and letting that always grow. And I think that, you know, in current times, we're quite impatient, I think.
Yeah.
We sort of like want it all and we want it now. And the idea of looking around is quite special as an idea, because I think, again, in my generation, we are looking around, but we're quite overwhelmed, perhaps. I mean, I definitely feel like that sometimes, because we've just been in the house for the past 18 months, trying to stay educated and on top of things and connected to the people that we love, and stay sort of rooted in the ground with a global pandemic, the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, and obviously this under-rumble always about the climate crisis. And I think we are trying to sort of to get grapple with what we can do about it, but a lot of that is online. And I like the idea of always staying curious, but perhaps like rooted in an IRL, in real life. The fact that you followed that couple, the fact that you continue to do courses and learn with other people. You know, there's something quite special about like literally looking around you in the real world.
Yeah. I mean, it has to, I mean, in the times we're living in, you have to kind of just be curious where you can be curious. I mean, obviously, there are a number of online courses now. In fact, one of the courses I did a few, 3-4 years ago was a free online course on forensic science. And basically, you had to solve a murder, and it was a course took place over, was it 6 weeks? And each week it was like looking at fingerprint evidence, and then it was looking at you know, kind of other physical evidence and so forth to see if you could solve the murder. And it was really interesting, but it also taught me a lot about how forensic scientists work. And, you know, so they're out there. I mean, I think the organization was called Future Learn. And I don't know if they're still free, but certainly they used to be free.
That's
amazing.
I did
a couple of courses with them. And it was a brilliant, brilliant course. I loved it. And it was, and so, you know, so it's about, there are some out there that are free. There are some that, yes, you have to pay for, but you can get concessions and so forth. Or otherwise, you know, if you want to be a writer and you want feedback on your work, maybe try and find a writing group and in the area where you live. And if you can't find one, maybe set one up for yourself, where people are supportive but you can get criticism. Kind of, obviously, you can get people to critique your work in a very supportive atmosphere. So I always think that there are ways of trying to do that. But I think actually what stood me in good stead when I was getting all those rejection letters was I'd already had the lesson of, if you want something, then if you work for it and don't give up. Because originally I wanted to be an English teacher. I had such a love of reading that I wanted to kind of pass that on and be a teacher. And that was the thing I wanted to do from the time I was like 10. And then when I was doing my A-levels and I wanted to go to university, my careers teacher, when I told her that I wanted to go to Goldsmiths College and I wanted to do an English and drama degree and I wanted to be a teacher at the end of it. And she just looked at me and she said, well, you know, black people don't become teachers. And she said, why don't you be a secretary instead? And I remember being so shocked when she said that. And then she said, well, she said, I don't think you're going to get your English A-level, so I can't give you a good reference, which was a load of nonsense, because I've never failed an English exam in my life. I might have failed one or two others and had to resit them, but I've never failed an English exam in my life. So, and she looked at me, she said, I'll tell you what, she said, I'll give you a reference to do business studies in college, in Poly. And I thought, I don't want to do business studies. And she said, but you're not, she said, she saw my face and then she said, well, that's what I can do. And then she said again, you're not going to, because I don't believe you're going to pass your English A-level. And I remember looking at her, and I just thought, I want to show you, you old cow. But I just thought, right. And if anything, it actually made me work harder. But you know what that taught me? Because I went to college, and I was rushed to hospital in the first term, and I had my appendix out, and I had to come back down to London to recuperate. And I gave up my place on the business studies course. And it wasn't for me anyway. I knew that. Even before I went, I knew business studies wasn't for me. But when that happened, I gave up my place. And by that time, I had my A-level results. And so I applied to Goldsmiths College. And I went for an interview and I got in. And it taught me a lesson. It taught me that in this life, whoever you are, whatever your background, you're going to have people in your face telling you you can't do it, or it's not for you, or you're reaching too high, or you're reaching too far, whatever. If you really, really want it, whatever it is, then I would say don't let these people stop you. Don't waste your time arguing with them. Just find a way to go around them. And I applied to Goldsmiths off my own bat, and I got in. And for one reason or another, I didn't go. I went into computing instead for 9 years. But the point is, it taught me a lesson. When I started writing and I was getting all those rejection letters, it taught me that if I really want it, don't give up and find a way to make it work. And if one editor doesn't like a story, then maybe another one will. And if it's not suitable for one publishing house, then maybe it'll be suitable for another one. So just keep going for it. Keep going for it. And so, you know what? That careers teacher, I wasted, a couple of years of my life absolutely hating her because I thought she'd ruined my life. But you know what? She did me a favor. And the woman's dead now, but actually, if I were to meet her now, I would just thank you, because you did me a favor. You taught me that if somebody's getting in my face about you can't do this or this not for you, just go around them. Find a way to go around them.
Amazing. I'm taking mental notes here. So from patience to laser sharp focus, curiosity, and determination. There's a real perseverance.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, you know what? There were so many people in the writing class. Well, not so many people. There were a few people in the writing class, much, much better writers than me, far better writers than me. But they'd get 1 and 2 rejection letters and we'd never see them again. And as far as I was concerned, I was going to be there till I was 90, until I got something published. I was going to keep at it. So it's not just about I think it's not just about having that sort of innate talent, if you believe in that. I think talent can be nurtured.
Yeah.
And I think the craft of writing can be taught. But I think it all means nothing if you don't have the determination and the perseverance to keep going.
Lovely. Thank you so much. I'm going to use this little moment to say to everyone at home that we are taking questions and we will be answering them, hopefully, in the next 15 minutes or so. And you guys, I've got all the devices for it to work. So if this is sparking your brain, don't worry. If I'm not asking the right question, you'll get the opportunity to at some point. Malorie, has the landscape changed for Black writers? Is it more open? Are we at an exciting time? Because I know that the publishing world is trying to keep up, but that, for me, has only started to really show itself quite recently, I think.
Absolutely. I think it's only in the last couple of years that we're beginning to see more, certainly in this country, in the UK, more writers of colour being published, being promoted. For about 10, 15 years ago, I've been knocking around so long now that I know I can say 10, 15 years ago, we were beginning to see those numbers increase, and then it's like, it was almost like it was fashionable for a while, and then the publishers, and then it sort of just dwindled. The way I could judge this was kind of like, when I first started, I'd go to literary events and so forth, and I would be one of a very, very few faces of colour in literary festivals and at various dues and publishing dues and all the rest of it. And then 10, 15 years ago, there were beginning to be more faces of colour at these things. And then about 7, 8 years ago, suddenly I was back to being one of 2 or one of 3 again. So, but over the last couple of years, I think it has actually got better, and it feels different to me. It feels like there's a real commitment and a momentum behind actually being more inclusive by a number of publishers. Where I mean, okay, some of it might be, from some publishers might be performative, but I really do believe there are publishers out there who mean it, who really want to be more inclusive in their publishing. And I think they recognize that they are, they're a fool to themselves if they're not, because, you know, in the times we're living in now, you know, I could publish a book, I could, you know, an ebook, and it'd be very easy to do so and put it on kind of online sites, etc. There are other avenues out there to get your work published. I mean, obviously, I recommend trying to go via a reputable publisher, because then they will promote your book and they will distribute it, and they will, you know, and they will market it and so forth, and they will pay you. If a publisher says that you have to pay them, then run a mile, because, you know, they're supposed to pay you. But, you know, so it has changed, but there's still work to do. There's still, I think there's still a lot of work to do, but, and, you know, I think also there are recent events. I mean, I've been filming a BBC Maestro course over the last kind of 10 days or whatever. And so I haven't been on social media at all. So I've missed various things that have been going on recently. But so I've been playing catch up, but it's just been, I think that's been very instructive in every time I feel we're taking steps forward in publishing, it seems like maybe, you know, but sometimes we take a step back. And then, you know, the same as kind of where we are, where it comes to race relations and so forth in society as a whole. I hope, being an optimist, I hope the overall momentum is forward and to more understanding and enlightenment. But sometimes we are in that process of taking a step back, and then we have to kind of just check ourselves, and then kind of, okay, and this is happening, we sort this out, and then we can move forward again. So, you know, maybe that's where we are with this. But I do hope, and I do feel that with some publishers, they really are committed to being more inclusive in their publishing. But you know, I remember when I started, and I sold a book to a particular publishing house who are going to remain nameless, and I went for a meeting with the editor, and I was talking to her about, oh, you know, and I had an idea for a second book, and would you be interested in that? She said, oh, no, we just want this one for our multicultural list. And now this was 29 years ago, so it was a while ago. But I've always been very wary of publishers who only wanted me to tick a box.
Yeah.
And so the publishers, you know, my major publisher now is Penguin Random House, because I feel they absolutely are committed to, you know, my books, and it's not to tick a multicultural, you know, list or whatever, or that sort of tick box exercise. It's because they kind of believe in my writing and feel that, you know, that I can bring something to the table on that front. And I'd rather have it that way than someone just publishing me because they've got a quota and feel they need to meet their quota, and then they don't care for a second book or a third book because they just got a quota to fill. Yeah. No, thank you. I just, you know, I'm happy to kind of just go find someone else. So.
And I think what you discussed about, like, this kind of seesaw of progress, and then it feels like you've gone backwards. I think in some ways the discussion proves some sort of growth. The fact that we're able to have the discussion so boldly.
Yeah.
I find something quite momentous and optimistic about being able to talk about race in the arts, in our society, in the way that we are. I feel like I'm talking about it in a way that I never have felt comfortable to be able to.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's something that we need to discuss. And I think, but it is this thing of sometimes it does feel when you try and bring up the subject, for some people it's like, you know, shields up, red alert kind of thing, and they get very defensive, and which is a shame, because I just think we're all here to learn, and we're all only human, and you can only just do your best. But I do feel it's like when I started writing, for example, and I think it was my first or second book, and I had written the phrase in my book, somebody saying, "How could I have been so blind?" And the editor said to me, we've had the RNIB, the Royal National Institute for Blind People, in touch with us and a number of other publishers asking us not to use that phrase to me when it means, how could I have been so stupid? Now, I wasn't aware. I mean, I had never thought of it in those terms before, and I thought, oh, you know what? That is how I'm using it, but it was just kind of a phrase to me, and I've never used it in that context since. And and so it's one of those things. I thought, you know what? Put my hand up to it. You're absolutely right. Never use it in that way again. So, it's every day's a school day. You're learning, but you have to be receptive to that. And you have to kind of listen to that without, I mean, it's very easy to get defensive when you get something wrong. But I think that's a shame, because if all you have to do is listen, say, you know what, I got it wrong. I'll do better. I will try to do better. That's all any of us can do. And I just feel, sometimes in publishing, sometimes it might need a bit more of that.
I think
because it's not that we're expecting people to get it right all the time, but just put your hand up to it when you get it wrong.
And language, words, books, the world of literature, they are so important, in progressive discussions and optimism and anchors and making people feel less alone. And, we are talking about language specifically here. There's so many phrases, there's so many gendered terms, for example, that we need to sort of condition ourselves to perhaps let go of. And I love the idea that every day is a school day, because it just gives us this opportunity to discover and navigate humility and just being a bit like, we are all in this together. Particularly if we're talking about the UK over here on this crazy cluster of the world that I find so bizarre and ever-changeable. One thing that I am quite sure of is that we are made up of so many different wonderful things. And for me, that is always what's kept me so excited about the world. Being of heritage Scottish and Jamaican myself, to be mixed, or the idea of that, whatever that means, personally has always felt like there's so much to discover, culturally. And I think that that's been reflected in the UK that I've grown up in. And I would hope that we can all feel like that we have an inclusive discussion where every day is a school day, and that it's represented in who's writing our books, who is on the telly, etc. We need that mix, that kind of multiculturalism and that openness around us everywhere. So
absolutely,
I hope that it's getting better.
But I do feel that also we need to kind of just hammer home the message that being culturally diverse and inclusive it's not like it's a pie where where if somebody else kind of is kind of part of that discussion, part of that debate. It's not, what I'm trying to say is, for some people, they think of it as a pie where everyone is kind of, people have their allocated slices, and if more people come to the table, there's less for everybody. That's not the way it works. The more people come to the table, the more there is for everybody, is what I'm trying to say in my convoluted way.
Yeah.
So I feel like, but some people, they have absolutely, it's like they feel like if they are more inclusive, then somehow they're going to lose something. And I don't get that thinking, because if we're more inclusive as a society, if we are more, I feel that brings more to the table. It means there's more depth in the stories being told. There's a richness in the stories being told. We are getting, it's like Nietzsche said, there's no truth, only perspectives. At the risk of sounding arty-farty, but you know what?
You can sound arty-farty, darling. You're at the International Book Festival.
Yeah, but I think, if that's true, if there's no truth, only perspectives, surely the more perspectives we have, the closer to the truth we get. And it's about kind of just trying to find that truth of the human condition and human existence.
And I would go as bold
as sounding arty-farty literati.
But arty-fartiness, it's important. It's important. Arts and culture are an entry point, a salvation for others. And I do believe that books save lives. What book have you read that has changed your life?
Oh, wow. Gosh, so many. I mean, The Colour Purple changed my life, because before that, I genuinely didn't think that Black people wrote books. because I'd never seen any, and it's hard to be it when you don't see it. So representation matters. So yeah, Alice Walker absolutely changed my life. Toni Morrison changed my life. The fierce intelligence that she brings to, or she brought to all of her books, that was it was just beautiful to read. I mean, every book I read as a child that I loved influenced me. Every book I read as a child that I loved less influenced me, because there were a lot of books I read and I thought, God, I'm sure I could do better than that. So I think it all is sort of grist to the mill. But I definitely, a number of books, like, for coloured girls who've considered suicide when the rainbow wasn't enough, was influential in my reading. Jacqueline Woodson, some of her narrative verse stories, absolutely instrumental in kind of influencing me and my writing. As I said, just any good book. I remember, for example, reading Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier when I was 11, and being absolutely blown away by it. And it was a librarian at my public library who said, Laurie, read this. Because they'd known, I'd been there from the time I was 7. I was there practically every weekend. So I read everything in the children's library that I wanted to read. And then that's when they started, the librarians started giving me adult books, or books to read from the adult library. And the first one that I was given by a public librarian was Jane Eyre, which I loved, and it's still one of my favorite books. And then the second one they gave me was Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. And and it was just a revelation, the fact that this woman had such an influence on everyone's lives, but we never saw her apart from through their lives, because she was dead when the story started. And I'd never seen a story written in quite that way. I was given The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, Agatha Christie's The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. Again, never seen a story told in quite that way. So I devoured all of her Hercule Poirot and Jane Marple stories. And some of them were problematic, but I read them. And then, so it was kind of just all of those stories that kind of influenced me, all the good stories that influenced me. And the ones that in particular that changed my life were the ones from Black writers that made me feel, there are Black writers out there. Maybe I can do this too. And so those absolutely changed my life. And so it was incredibly important for me when I started to write books that featured Black children and Black protagonists that were having adventures, and they would go to strange lands, or they could do magic, or they were in a horror story, or they were in a kind of, like books like Pig Heart Boy, where about a boy who needs a heart, so he has a heart from a genetically modified pig, and so on. Just kind of having across lots of different genres, lots of different characters inhabiting the world, and inhabiting the world of literature. That was so important to me.
Well, all I can say on that note is thank you. Thank you for your ever-curious mind and for putting pen to paper with that determination. We've got loads of questions, so I'm going to have to move on to some questions from at home. Lucy says, which other authors or illustrators' books have you enjoyed recently that you would recommend?
What have I read recently? God, there's so many. Well, I've just finished The Upper World by Femi Faduga, and it comes out this month, in fact, and it's amazing. So I would definitely recommend that. I love the idea of that story as well. So brilliant.
What was it called?
It's called The Upper World.
The Upper World.
And it's out this month. What else? Oh, The Outrage by William Hussey. That's, again, another amazing book. There are so many. I mean, there's just so many I've read. And what I love, I'm very lucky because sometimes I get them sent to me. Although a number of them were sent to my agent, and then they haven't been in the office for like over a year. So I suddenly got a huge box full, which was kind of really nice. I'm working my way through those. But
I don't know how you find the time. You find the time.
Well,
my goodness.
Well, it's kind of hard. It is hard, because obviously was writing my Endgame. and then kind of had other things going on and so forth, but then trying to read as well and make sure I kept reading, just for my own sanity. So it was tricky, but those are definitely two that I've read and enjoyed recently. So yeah, but there are so many brilliant books out there. So yeah, I think we're so lucky. We've got so many amazing YA books coming out as well.
Yes.
In particular.
Can you tweet us a little list after this?
I will.
Okay,
I will do that.
so we're going to find Malorie on Twitter, and she's going to write us a whole tip of tips for the rest of our reading for the rest of the year. And we've got a question in the audience, I think. I don't know, do we? Do we have any questions in the audience? Yes, hello. Let's go there.
Hi there, Malorie. Thank you so much for your time. It was really interesting. You've obviously written an amazing number of books and been so productive. And I just wondered about the actual sort of process of writing in terms of, does it just pour out of you, or do you tend to be more regimented? Do you say, right, I'm going to write for so many hours a day or so many words? So yeah, it's more about the process I was interested in.
Okay. Well, the process is definitely apply backside to chair and get on with it. If you wait for inspiration, you might wait a while. It's about being disciplined and just saying, okay, these are my writing hours. And the minimum is, for me, is to kind of say 9 till 6 with 1 hour for lunch. And just, you know, and I tend to do the creative stuff, the fresh stuff in the morning. If it's a new book, then I'll carry on. But if it's, if it's kind of, I've written the first draft, then it's about re-editing, reworking, getting it as good as I possibly can. But it's definitely about sitting down every day that I'm not doing events and things and writing. And so I think it's a lovely idea that you just write when the muse calls, but it doesn't work that way. I think if you want to be a writer, especially with longevity or whatever, you just got to sit down and get on with it. And I wish there was I could say that there's some magic to it, or there's some kind of trick to it. There really isn't. You sit down and you get on with it. So that's my process. I come up to my attic after my shower and breakfast, and I sit and I work. And apart from 2 bouts of writer's block, one really bad one that lasted months, that's what I do when I'm not doing events and things. I just sit down and I get on with it.
Thank you. Dee says, how did you feel when you heard that your books were being adapted twice for the stage and for TV too?
Oh, I was thrilled. It's such a joy that when you hear that, because, and it's really strange because the characters that had lived in my head for so long, to suddenly see them actors, see it on stage or see it on screen is so bizarre, because you think, oh my God, I kind of made that up, and now it's being acted and so on. But it's such a lovely feeling, and I just feel very lucky and very blessed that that's happened. I mean, the TV series, I'm so proud of the TV series. I think they did a brilliant job, and that I think they have just finished series 2. Or if they haven't finished, they will soon. So that's coming. So I just feel really, really lucky that that we're going to finish this sort of story and so on. So but it is bizarre to suddenly see your characters in the flesh, as it were, and it's kind of strange to kind of think, oh God, that's all based on something that I just made up. That's really weird, but it is a lovely feeling, and I'm seeing both stage versions and kind of just sitting in the audience thinking, wow, this is kind of weird, but amazing and weird.
Yeah,
but I
cool.
love that.
Very cool. Have we got any other questions from the audience?
Oh, do you want me to read? Am I going to read a bit of Endgame, or have we got time?
Yeah, if you want. I'll take one more question from the audience, and then we'd love for you to read.
Okay.
Absolutely inspirational. Sadly, for so many of our children and young people, every day has not been a school day for the last 18 months. Yeah. And I really wanted your reflection on how perhaps all of us can work to inspire children and young sort of people, perhaps within sort of schools, over this next year as we try and support those children and young sort of people as we come out the other side of this terrible time.
Thank you for that question. That's very lovely. Well, not lovely, but it's important.
It is very, very important. What I would say is we've got to listen to our children. We have to, if they are having mental health difficulties, take them seriously. We need more resources if our children are having mental health challenges. I would definitely say let them, even more emphasis on reading for pleasure and creative outlets. Let them express themselves creatively. And unfortunately, when schools are strapped for resources, it tends to be things like drama and dance and music and art that get cut first. And those are the ways that our children have to express themselves. And I think we curtail those activities at our peril, because I think we're setting ourselves up for really, really hard times for our children and our teens if we curtail those activities. So I would say just let them paint, let them go to drama classes if they can, if the school does it. Music, let them express themselves through music or through art or craft, and just let them read, and especially let them read for pleasure. And if it's comic books, and if it's graphic novels or picture books, and if you've got someone who's 13, 14, they can still enjoy picture books. I mean, be restrictive about who can read what, and that's just let them do that. And I think that we have to pay attention to that, and we have to pay attention to the mental health of our children, because these last 18 months have been something that we have never been through before, and a lot of people are kind of still trying to figure their way out of it. Good question.
Thank you, and thank you. So we've got a couple of minutes, so you might be doing it quickly, but I would love to hear an excerpt from Endgame, Malorie.
Okay, well, this is chapter 16, and this is Sephi's chapter. And so I'll just launch straight into it as time is marching. Sleep scares me. It's got to the point now where my bed is a tangible manifestation of the enemy. I am dog-tired all the time, yet afraid to close my eyes. I had the same dream again last night, the one I've been having regularly for a while now. I'm standing in an empty space, no people, no birdsong, no greenery, just soiled grey tarmac beneath my feet and nothing else. The tarmac runs unbroken to the horizon in every direction. I'm at the center of a deserted world, and the loneliness inside swallows me like an Ouroboros. Where am I? I have no idea, and yet the place seems familiar. I turn my head, calling out, "Hello? Hello?" But no one is there. I can't shake the feeling that there's something or someone behind me. Twisting round like a leaf in a gale gets me nowhere. So I stand absolutely still, close my eyes for a moment, then suddenly turn like I used to do as a child when trying to catch out my reflection to prove that it had a life of its own. Only this time, a few meters before me, is a scaffold. Callum swings at the end of the rope hanging from it, a black hood over his head. I scream and scream again. Save him! If I can get to him in time, I can prevent his death, hoist him up, cut the rope, something. I have to save him. I walk, then run towards him, but I never get any nearer. I'm on a treadmill, a road to nowhere. I race until sweat pours from my forehead like a waterfall, stinging my eyes, running like ribbons of salt water between my lips and onto my tongue. My blouse sticks to me like a new plaster. And still I run until my lungs burn in protest and my vision grows blurry. I'm moments away from passing out. Only then do I stop. My heart shatters like dropped glass because Callum is just as far away as he ever was. I reach out, but it's no use. Slowly, my hand drops to my side. In despair, I turn away, and there he is in front of me again, gently swinging, the noose still around his neck. I turn left, he's there. Right, he's there. I turn my back, he's in front of me. I spin round, he's before me. My worldview is a kaleidoscope of Callum dying. With tears streaming down my face, I fall to my knees. I'm sorry, Callum, I'm so sorry, I cry. Forgive me. Without warning, his head jerks up like he's listening. I stumble back and scream till my ears ring, scream myself awake. And for the rest of the night, sleep and I are strangers. So I sit on the edge of my bed, staring into darkness as I rock slowly back and forth, and remember. So that's chapter 16.
Oh! It's been so special. Thank you for that reading. What a wonderful way to end a celebration of the 20th anniversary of Noughts and Crosses. And of course, the book and all the books from the series, a number of Malorie's incredible works are available on the online shop and in the physical shop here at the Edinburgh Book Festival 2021. What a beautiful way to do it. It happened from your attic, which just feels very cool. It's like MTV Cribs or something. Stormzy's favourite writer, and many people here's favourite writer too. Thank you, Malorie. Thank you. See you later.